So I'd ask to take a moment. We're going to do a short meditation as we enter in tonight. I thought it might be appropriate since the topic of tonight is healing. And I'd like to incorporate something of that, of letting go of the karmic matrix and dissolving. So I would just ask you now just to take a moment to allow yourself just to relax, be where you are, be present, comfortable in your space. And just to focus your awareness now just on your breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Slowing things down. Open up your sphere sensation. Allowing the body just to completely relax. If you will, I'd like you to imagine the open sky above you. Whether it be night or day, it doesn't matter. Just this open sky above you. Seeing this vast sky all around you as you sit beneath it. Abiding. Becoming aware now of the gap between inhalation and exhalation. This spaciousness, this space between breath. Breathing in, pause. Breathing out, aware of this gap. Allow yourself to rest in this gap. Relaxing deeper. As we focus on this space, I would like you to visualize above you, in the sky above you, this light like the sun descending upon your crown and entering through your crown into your heart. This light, this presence of awareness streaming down, filling you from within and behind your heart. Breathing in and out, expanding through this spacious gap, this radiance of awareness, extending now through your entire being. Feel and see this light extending through your body and beyond. Just being as this clear sky above you. Feel and know your being beyond the sky as you dissolve into it, feeling yourself expand, dancing in the sky, yet aware and present in the now. Being here and now and ever beyond, one at the same time, dissolving. We welcome and we honor the Holy One into this holy matrix, extending this light now, giving thanks and giving praise. May this light ever be an extension, offering this light to all beings, that all may participate, all may partake of this light. We give thanks, we give praise in the holy name. Amen and amen. Okay. So 3 stories tonight that extend this teaching about healing and Yohanan the Baptist. Feeling these stories very much intricately interwoven, overlapping. They seem to play off of each other. Intuitively, it's we can lay them out linear, but they're very non-linear in sequence in feeling them as I'm reading the stories and feeling them. But going through the first story with this gentleman coming to Yohanan with a crippling back pain. And right away I notice he has this pain in the back, which Kabbalistically is, I have this feeling referring to something of the other side, perhaps something undermining, something that this person is feeling grief. There's something backed up literally in this individual where he's suffering. And he comes to Yohanan, and you could see this struggle in faith, perhaps. And Yohanan feels this, and he's brought to him by his close friends. So you can feel that there's this close network of friends extending and helping. And Yohanan feels this and knows that intuitively this individual may have a backstory. There might be something else going on, but moves forward and go ahead and he initiates this healing. And through this healing, this gentleman begins to dance, and he's ecstatic, which is in itself a whole teaching on the mystery of this charismatic worship, this dance through the feet. And I couldn't help but recognize something of this balance between him not being able to walk and the legs, probably with a bad back, he probably couldn't stand up. So I was feeling this contemplation with Hoda Nutzok and this whole play of being able to this balance that happens of being restored And I was feeling this very much in the play. But there's something about this dancing that brings about this radical liberation, letting go of through this rejoicing and this joy, this bliss that is felt through dancing. I know in ceremony, because as a percussionist, I know very well when charismatic worship gets underway and there's a lot of dancing and spirit is taken up, there's a shift into the heart. And we're kind of letting go and letting the heart. And there's something about this charismatic worship, this dancing, that allows for this radical healing to come about. So I was feeling that in the story, and would love to hear others chime in when it's time. But I was feeling that quite intimately about pretty much just allowing one to let go into this pure worship of pure joy, and what that brings about true healing, and what healing means, and also walking in a way that allows for this influx of the tree of life. Last week we were speaking of the sacred circle and what it means to walk in a divine way. And I couldn't help but feel this connection from what Malachi was sharing on Shabbat about being present and being in the now, and the dissolution of this karmic matrix through right speech, thought, and action, and what that implies. And it seems to restore one's way and one's walking in the way, way of righteousness, and so on and so forth. Not going into full detail, because we'll probably allow that in the exploration of others joining in. But going into the second story, it's very similar. The guy this gentleman has fallen, and has a pain in his neck. And again, the neck automatically signified to me something Kabbalistically of this blocking between the head and the heart, or mind and the heart. There seems to be the neck being involved. And we know Kuf is the back of the head, so I'm not sure if this individual has something going on the back of the neck, but it just indicated neck. And so again, I feel this blockage, and the gentleman repents that he's had a rough life, and that he's had some bitterness and some anger and some remorse stored up. And of course, Yohanan basically is willing to take up this healing and brings about this beautiful miracle of healing this gentleman. And again, there's this feeling of removing the karmic conditioning that we have in place, oftentimes in our lenses, like Malachi was often describing, these snake scales that allow us to peel back negative thought, negative emotion, that allows one to create this past or this history of who and what we think we are, and not allowing us to really be present and dissolving and allowing ourselves just to be. So that was something I was hearing in that story. And then the third story, obviously, you have a Pharisee's son who's gravely ill, and he's coming near to death. And the Pharisee is definitely, obviously, feeling this remorse for his son, and goes to Yohanan in secret. And Yohanan can kind of pick up on this, and feels and knows and sees that his son's definitely, and actually speaks this word to him, saying that death has entered into your house. And wow. And so he basically gives instructions to this gentleman of, if you allow yourself to follow these instructions of go, surround yourself with these sages, and study the Torah, also to give 50 pieces of silver to the poor, and then bring this child to me. And so he does exactly this. And Yohanan receives him after he follows this instruction, baptizes the child, and offers up a name-changing ceremony to change this individual's name. And the power of that name changing, again, it has to do with re-identifying, allowing oneself to re-identify with their true nature, their enlightened nature, their Christ nature, or Buddha nature, however you wish to define that. And through this name changing, kind of drop personal history, drop who and what we think we are, and realign, being reborn. There's this rebirthing that happens with name changing. I've seen this in continuum with companions who've undergone such a ceremony. It's almost like a death and rebirth for the individual. And it's something of realigning with one's neshama, more aligning with one's neshama, and aligning with one's message and who and what they are. It's very similar to prayer, that our incarnation, the way that we carry ourselves, the way we walk in this world, is a prayer, and it is our message. And perhaps with this name changing, there can be something of closer realigning of our true name, our true nature in the Holy One, and what that might mean. And so I was feeling that in this power of name changing and what that does in one's consciousness, and realigning with our holy and our true neshama. So those are some things that were coming up. There's obviously a lot more angles, but those are things that were speaking to me. And obviously I would love to hear all your weaves and intuitions and inclinations. So I'm going to open that up to everyone else's dance.
Well, with the individual that had the back pain and the dancing and the feet, I couldn't help but think of the path we walk and how sometimes we get distracted from our original intention of coming to this world. And if we remember through, a subtle inclination within, or whether we have dreams of this, there is a remembering of our original mission, messianic works, when we come to a path or meet as a Zaddik. So I feel this in correcting the feet and the walking of one's path in healing, that through correcting one's connection with the Holy One, obviously outer healing is important, but inner healing is the most important. And that's kind of what I hear with feet, that these go hand in hand with our direction in life.
Very much. Feeling feet with Malkut, obviously, and walking in the way. Malachi often speaks of what it means to walk in the way. And you often hear in the Psalms and the Proverbs about one who gets tangled up in the feet and one who goes astray through the feet. But it's through the feet, and I'm drawn to how we integrate something of the presence and power through the vital, through the physical. And there has to be this full reception of incorporating the vital. Without it, it's kind of like having a pet or an animal that doesn't obey, like a dog or so on and so forth, that isn't obeying. So there has to be kind of like this training in the sense of realigning one's way and integrating this energy. So I'm hearing that in what you're speaking about, how we incorporate and how we embody teaching. Oftentimes, it might take some time or lifetimes to fully integrate. There might be a mission or a message for a specific incarnation where we focus on one aspect of the bodies, whether it's a spiritual body, emotional body, astral body, and we're going to fully realign until we can fully integrate something more of our holy neshama and our ruach and bring it down into our nefesh and our vital. And when something of that happens, we have something of this awakening of this divine presence in the here and now. So I don't know if that speaks to what you're speaking, Catherine, in a way of realigning and walking in the way. And again, I'm feeling a lot of Malachi made this, what he was making a discourse back in, I think it was August, of right speech, right thought, and right action, and aligning all those as a practice, and how we incorporate that through the day, through our life, moment to moment, drawing our thoughts, our emotions, our actions into more righteous actions. And so, yeah, I'm hearing that in what you're speaking as well. Something about relying all of who we are and rematrixing, very much like the name changing ceremony. We're re-identifying, realigning with our holy intention, something of our greater intention, and then drawing that intention into our actions, into our speech, into our thoughts, and practicing that. So I'm hearing that.
I thought it was lovely, these writings on what you're speaking of here is this walking of the path, and how much different it is for the grades of souls that come in. And there's still the one way, the true way, but you have this one going from story to story, this one soul who's they're definitely from the first to the last story, they're definitely at different grades. And this last story, the third one, you have these two grades of clearly for much higher grades of soul that were put here for this glorification. And their story, this name change, this Pharisee who would recognize this, this is just the beginning of what their story was. You know, their stories led into Yeshua, and then beyond Yeshua into the apostles, the son growing up and becoming, a prophet, and and Zadok himself. So you have all three stories seem to incorporate every single way to walk in the way, and there's still just this one way that seems to be underlying.
Yeah, good insight, very much. I'm feeling that too in that last story, the weave of the actual names that he chose, Simeon versus Reuben, and the tribes. If knowing the history of the tribes in Simeon and Reuben, there seems to be something. I mean, he doesn't necessarily hint that in the text, but should some suggestion as though there is some definitely long threads that need to be dissolved from lifetimes that this person's carrying that might be being uplifted or transformed in that healing. I'm also marveling at the second story when Yohanan breathes 3 times and he goes within himself to draw something out for this individual. meaning there's this exchange of sparks that's happening. And I can feel that with Zadik over lifetimes where there is this exchange continuing happening through different incarnations, and this full exchange that's transpiring from incarnation to incarnation. But I'm feeling strongly that the name Simeon means to hear. And so this individual is finally able to hear the Holy One. Right? As perhaps in previous incarnations, he may have only been nudged. There's something of being able to receive. There's some kind of receptivity. And what you're speaking of through the journey is aligning all these different vehicles and consciousness, like I was speaking earlier about. There might be certain incarnations where we might focus on certain aspects of the soul to come into being, so that in the next incarnation, something of the Ruach can come into being. And in order for that Ruach to be receptive, your Nefesh has to be realigned. There has to be something of the ability to receive something of the Ruach. Up until that point, there might be just basic life lessons that need to be undergone through just simple relationships, simple things that need to be, that aren't negating the path, but they're fully drawing out the fullness of the Nefesh before the Ruach can step in, and then so forth. The Neshama can complete that alignment, if I'm making sense. And it's a process. It's not so linear either. I mean, from one incarnation to another, going backwards and forwards, I really feel it's not even that, because there might be something non-sequential in our coming into being, where at certain points we might be receiving something of this energy versus this. And I don't think in the totality of it, it doesn't feel very linear to me, but there seems to be something of this all the timing in the Holy Shekinah that plays out in the journey of the soul. And it's definitely not sequential or linear in any way. And I'm feeling that in what you're sharing about how one comes to true healing. And the word healing itself seems to imply something of this full receptivity of our true neshama, our holy soul, and in the Holy One. This true image, Azalem, this true name, this true image in who we are in the Holy One, and drawing something of that into incarnation. And it's, like you said, a process. It's not something where you might be obviously fully embodied, but over incarnations, yes, that makes sense.
I wasn't sure exactly. I don't seem to be on.
Yeah, okay. I can hear you.
I wasn't sure exactly what to make of the name change in that third story. Although Reuben, the roots of Reuben, as I remember, it's something like "Behold the Son" or "Behold the Child." Mm-hmm. That has something to do with seeing, and Simeon has to do with hearing. It's related to the word for ears.
Right.
So I wasn't sure what to make of that change from the visual sense to the audio.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I mean, I know with Reuben and the birthright wasn't given because this whole play with Bila and that whole play upon the bed, and there seems to be not this full alignment with the Shekinah. And then Reuben's line obviously dissolves in the story whereas Simeon, it's a different playing out, as I understand. And so I think this not taking it so linear, but feeling it. I'm feeling it internally. Of, like I was speaking before, of again, neshama, ruach, and nefesh, in the sense of these bodies are vital, are physical, and higher vital, all have to realign and understand and know that inherently all of it is empty, and that there is no substantial self-existence, and that all of it's based on this ein, and there's no thingness. Because really there is who and what we think we are and what we truly are in the Holy One are two different things, in the sense of all the thought and thinking that create these stories, as we've discussed previously in Shabbat, seem to create this, or fill in the karmic continuum, this karmic matrix of forces that we align ourselves with. And I just don't feel with Reuben, there was that full alignment. Obviously, there was something not completely gelling. Obviously, so if that's what I'm hearing in your question, Rolf.
And then there were the two Pharisees that were observing.
Yeah.
And that was just a little detail that was sort of thrown in there, but obviously it means something.
Right.
It wasn't just thrown in there gratuitously.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some exchange of sparks happening there with those Pharisees. Maybe not in that specific incarnation, but they may have been there to receive something of the transmission, and again, have to play out in their journey of their soul. How probably there's many who don't necessarily come into light transmission or into a lineage or tradition, but on the outskirts they might hear something of it that sparks something, that allows something to take off, and perhaps they witness something of this miracle. Perhaps, I don't know, or felt something of the energy and were intrigued by it. So perhaps that might play into those Pharisees who are on the outskirts looking in. So, but I feel something of this exchange of sparks that's happening there for our souls to play out. I mean, ourselves coming into being, and through lineage and through light transmission, meaning, and how we extend this to others, whether they're aware of it or not. Again, I'm feeling how right thought, speech, and action, and living this, embodying it, walking in the way, and something of carrying this energy and this message, whether we're aware of it or not, and perhaps Spirit might tap us on the shoulder, but how we interact and our relationships with others throughout the day, throughout a life, there's definitely something going on. There's an exchange that we have. And this doesn't necessarily mean a physical being. It could be an animal. It could be a tree. It could be a lot of things that we're interacting with. And there's this exchange of energy that's happening all the time, because things are constantly in motion. The only change is change itself. And if we're not so fixed and realize this self is not a fixed or static thing, there is this ongoing exchange all the time with beings and forces, and this exchange of sparks that's happening. So I'm feeling this big dance, and again, it goes back to the dancing and the joy of the dance of the Holy Shekinah, and dancing with and as the Holy Shekinah, she can be pretty wild, or not. But I mean, there just seems to be this dance, this rhythm of being in tune, so to speak.
Ralph, you mentioned earlier of the switch from or into the auditory. And I remember from those two Pharisees on the outside, it specifically wrote that they heard it, that they heard this name change. So curious insight there.
Yeah, that is curious. I didn't pick up on that, but thank you for sharing that. Yeah. If they heard that, then like something went off in them, a bell, a little thing went off, and say they may have, even if they weren't aware of it energetically, they may have felt it. Obviously, oftentimes the manifestation body of a living Zadik has a lot of energy and light, whether one is aware of it or sees it in their sphere of sensation. Just being in that physical body alone, they carry a presence and power that rays out and touches a lot of beings. And so perhaps in this way, they were hearing it and seeing something in a different way, or something was going off, perhaps. I don't know. That's what comes to mind when I'm hearing that statement.
I think in each of these stories, I think it's already been alluded to. I think maybe Sister Catherine mentioned something about it, but in each of the stories, the physical is always the pathway to the spiritual, to a spiritual revelation and revival. But one thing in particular that caught my attention was, since I'm currently reading The Anatomy of the Soul, and something that Rabbi Nachman mentions was what happened in the second story, that Yohanan is sighing deeply 3 times, and according to Rabbi Nachman's teachings, the purpose of that is to break through the flesh, to break through the physical and into the spiritual. So perhaps Yohanan is reaching spiritually into this man's heart to try to draw out that confession. And that's what I'm seeing in each of these other stories too, that the healing is drawing out something. In the first story, it's drawing out the man's dancing. In the second story, it's drawing out the person's confession. And then there's the motivation of the Pharisee, of course, to save his son. And he spends all night studying and to stay the hand of the death angel. So it seems to me that there's this, what he was trying to do in particular in that second story was this stirring of the heart, this, as well as doing the physical healing, but also his hand on the neck, again, to connect the heart and the head, and then his hand on the heart to try to open his heart and get him to confess. So that's kind of what I saw in the second story.
Yeah, very much so. I feel that very much. Thank you for sharing that. And that shattering that's happening through the breath and through that working with breath and allowing that shift in the subtle bodies for something of a breakthrough, something that allows one to break through or break out of this conditioning. Again, something of removing the husk, removing the shields around the eyes. In this sense, he had the back of the head. So what I'm hearing is something removing from an atavistic resurgence, something from the deep past, perhaps, maybe something that's being removed from a bestial inclination, being shattered and removed, and drawing something of the heart and bringing that forward. Obviously, the breath is a very powerful way of moving energy. It can be done with breath through laying on of hands as well, moving this energy. But breath is a very interesting way because all beings are breathing, and something of this ruach and neshama speak of this radiant, holy breath that pervades all things. And one can definitely disappear in these moments. And I think there was something of that happening for this individual, something of this dissolution that you're speaking of penetrating, pushing through. Obviously, the dancing definitely is pushing that because it's with the feet and it's ecstatic. Whereas this other movement, which you're speaking of, is something of this laying out of hands of the putting on the heart and the head of realigning the two that you're speaking and what that means. Because what does it mean to walk in the heart versus the head? I mean, we're walking in the head and not the heart. We might be caught up in thought and thinking quite a bit versus walking in the heart, which is the divine intelligence, something of this ruach. I don't know if that speaks to what you're speaking, but I'm feeling that at least.
The idea of the exchange of sparks and just this window into ourselves and how God uses, like you're saying, Kevin, the physical, our bodies, and how love. What caught my attention was how love was embodied. Like in the first story, the friends and the love and the faith that they brought that to Yohanan's attention, and then the second one, Yohanan's love, because he felt he was moved inside, and that stirred in that story. And then the third story, the love of a father for a son, and just the power of that compassion in the severity and how interconnected it was. And I can, it's these stories, how much there are stories too. And, I could relate to that last story, especially just in the sense of I have a son, and he, through his teenage rebellion, stirred me. And there was just something in my heart that moved, and anger first, and it really set me on the path, right? All that severity, and I could really relate to the second story too, the bitterness, and again, it's the heart, and being too much in the head, not connecting them, and the how the connection, it was opposite. It wasn't this, or I didn't hear it was the son's actions that were the issue. It was the father's. And that just sort of, it was a twist I wasn't expecting. And I could just how we, it's like just to be open, I guess, open to people, open to everything, and not to judge. That was sort of another thing I got and from my own life. So some thoughts.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. That's very beautiful. Feeling that. And especially how that first story, the friends, playing a very intricate role, and through their love and through their feeling of this gentleman who's suffering this pain, through that offering. I'm just feeling something of this selflessness, this emptiness of, and serving and being in the Holy One through this divine compassion and true love that is selfless, knowing that inherently, we're interconnected with all beings and everything and everyone, that there really isn't you and me in the sense of what we think. There is just the one. And when we see another suffer, we see someone else who's down and out, and this exchange of sparks that we're offering is just that. It's an act of feeling this other as oneself, and knowing that there is no separation, and that there is this deeper interconnection with all things and a sense of selflessness, true compassion, true love. So I'm feeling that strongly with what you're sharing, and how that, if nothing else, if we get out of ourselves and truly into the heart, we will feel and be in the sensitivity of the service for others, and knowing, without thinking about it, that we are all integrally connected, interwoven, in a way. And each individual is going to have their own need, but being present, being completely aware of the situation, we can be the best skillful means for each individual. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does it. That's healing.
Yeah.
That's the power there. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, healing is a big word, because there's not just this little self. I mean, healing is so intricately interwoven with everything and everyone that my healing and what I do for another and what they do another is kind of like a domino of this greater matrix and play of the Holy One that's playing out. So it's not so simple. There are a lot of things that are intricately woven into that matrix. Thank you for that. It was beautiful insight.
Through this conversation, I'm very much reminded of, especially with the name change, how the Holy One tells Abraham to look at the stars. And one of the interpretations of that is that the Holy One is going to rearrange the stars of Abraham's birth. And so I'm feeling that in that once one recognizes one's neshama, going back to path mission of one's neshama, then one's orientation changes. But I also very much appreciate how that also requires an alignment with speech and action. Not only do we bring forth what's within us, the neshama, and higher parts of self, but they need to align, which is also a part of healing. So I'm hearing the dual aspect there.
Beautiful. Awesome. Yeah, especially in that last story, there's really a big rebirth happening for this son, because he's definitely being reborn, and there's a realigning, rematrix of the soul happening at that moment for that individual. I could speak in an experience of sending of the soul, and something of that experience where one is brought into this journey, into the afterlife effect of beyond the body, experiencing this larger matrix of beings, forces in the Holy One. And then at the conclusion of such a ceremony, of bringing that all back into the alignment of the body, and then waking in that experience of something new, something else is aligned because you've been reborn, remade. There's a renaming in the sense of realigning or drawing out what you're speaking of this holiness trauma in a different ordering, different matrix in a way. And I think this ongoing process of awakening and enlightenment, in the sense there is no path, there's no goal but the path, but this greater awakening seems to be this reordering of these greater potentials in the Holy One, or in coming into being, if I'm making sense, coming into being and drawing something of this soul, of our holy neshama, our holy image, our divine image, our holy zalem, whatever that is, and drawing something of that, if that makes sense.
Something again in that the story of the injured man is where Yohanan says after everything is said and done, he's completed the healing, he's gotten the man's confession. He says to him something Malachi has been reinforcing quite a bit lately is through judgment you have received mercy, and the two working together as one. And he's helping the man to see that, light, and just think that's an important thing. It has just been something that has been brought up quite a bit recently.
Good insight. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, again, it has something to do with embodying something in the physical. Because in Malkut there is judgment, there is Gavera, there is something of this judgment that until we draw out the mercy and the balance of that, there seems to be something in the here and now that I'm feeling in what you're saying about how we embody something. And because here in this realm, they're governed by judgment. And there has to be this a balance of mercy and judgment to draw something of that out. At least that's what I'm feeling in what you're saying. There has to be some kind of equanimity and mercy that allows for this resting to take place without, or this dissolving, without the judgment to go off and play it into full judgment, I mean, without any kind of restoration or the ability to rest in the nature of mind. For example, in the afterlife experience, where one experiences, if there isn't something of this centeredness, the play of the karmic matrix will play itself out in judgment, in the sense of whatever one has lived, it will be played out, whether for good or for ill. And there's this karmic matrix. And what I'm hearing is something of this balance, of allowing mercy and judgment to balance and to be embodied.
I think I was also hearing this, the sense of because judgment is rooted in mercy, to not be averse to what the relative conditions are around you, that this is something that they work together. They work together for our benefit and for the man's benefit. So yes. I was hearing that also.
Yes, I think so. Each of us might take up incarnations in certain things that might be a hindrance or veils that we have to unveil in our own way. Some are easier, some are not, but each according to their way. I'm feeling that in what you're saying about how we must integrate everything that's arising in our life. And whether the deck has been full, however the deck's been played out, whether we have a bad hand or a good hand, it's all one hand. And I guess it's just a matter of how we play that hand and how we see it. And I'm feeling that in what you're saying. If we've been dealt a bad hand, how do we best incorporate that and use it in a way that's skillful and uplifting, and being benefit to others? Oftentimes we miss that part of how do we incorporate taking on the suffering of others in that way. Well, if I enjoyed all of your insights this evening, thank you for dancing and playing. It's wonderful to have your participation. I really appreciate everyone's insights and offerings this evening. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear you all. We'd just like to give thanks and praise to the Holy One, extending the merit of this light that we've gathered in this evening, extending it to all beings, that all may feel and know inherently their connection with the Holy One. We give thanks, we give blessings in the holy name. Amen and amen.